Hey, Alan.
Hello again, Ryan. How you doing today? Still hanging in there?
Yeah, it was. Did you just start it?
I just now started it.
Okay, because I got worried and I tried to go log in again, and that's what I did last
Oh
time.
no, yeah,
Down to the
I
last
I've been
second.
I've been starting them up about 10 minutes until 10 minutes before the actual start time, just to give presenters time to set up and make sure they can share their screens and everything.
Sure. Yeah, I was
That,
feeling
yeah.
a little panicked earlier on the first one.
Oh, gotcha.
How's your day going?
Pretty good. Busy but good. Kind of trying to balance out. I've been moderating sessions all day, and I've been trying to balance out that and taking care of work stuff and
You don't have
uh,
another job, do you? None of us have another job that we're trying to do on the side, are we?
Yeah, I'm a full-time Moodle conference goer.
So where do you work?
I'm at NC State University in Raleigh. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. There's I think about 12 of us here from NC State, so
Well,
pretty
it's
good
good to
group.
have you guys moderate
Yeah, it's
and volunteering like this. It's great.
yeah. I just wish it was all in person. That's the big bummer of the whole thing. It's be good to see everybody again. Tiny windows are great, but it's not the same thing. So.
No, it's not. If you're just coming in, this is something to keep us busy as we're waiting for the top of the hour. I have a before we start question that I'm curious about. So Alan, did you want to say anything to get us going as we
Are
hit
you ready to start?
4? Well, we got about a minute here. I was just
Oh, okay.
checking to see if you wanted to say a word, or you're just here in
No,
case disaster strikes.
that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'm just here just to make sure people stay muted if we're not doing a Q&A or anything, and just like babysitting just in case anything bad happens. But no, I just a reminder that we're recording it. So if you don't get it, if you missed something or want to go back and look at it again, we'll have it up on the course hopefully soon. I need to check with Ryan about when that's going to be done, or if I need to do it, or if he needs to do it, or how that works. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the recording I don't think I'm recording.
No, I'm recording it in Zoom. So it's being recorded in Zoom. It's just a matter of getting it linked into the courses. So you can go back to the course for this session and view it from there. So yeah, that's typically where I've seen them.
You may be thinking, or you may be talking other Ryan. Or me.
Oh yeah, the other Ryan.
You said me, so it kind of threw me off. And I said, as far as I know, I don't. But
no. no, it's talking about Ryan Hazen. Yeah.
Now I know what my colleagues feel like. I work with two Jasons, and we run into that all the time. So
we've got two Allens, and we both spell our names the same way. And
nice. Well,
it's fine.
It's fine. I guess I'll go ahead and get started. It is the top of the hour. Really appreciate everybody's time today, and it looks like everybody's hanging around until the 4 o'clock hour. So I'll get this started so that everybody can get on with your happy hour or whatever your desire is tonight. Since we're not all in Helena together, who knows? So I'll go ahead and start sharing here. The slides are open. It should be shared publicly. If you need access or something happens, let me know. I'll be available to answer questions. My name's Ryan Shrink. I am here from the Montana Digital Academy. We are the statewide online supplemental online offer for the state of Montana. And you may have met one or more of my colleagues. Mike and Jason are pretty vocal and active in the Moodle community. And I run another part of our program, and I'll go through that and talk to you about what that means here. And really, my story, this story today, is to help those of you that are starting to think about implementing or struggling with implementation of a technology integrated support program, model of any sort at a variety of levels. We work down to the classroom level and as large as the largest districts in our state, and including also adult ed programs and in colleges and universities. We have a program that we've started in the Montana State Prison and a variety of treatment centers and pre-release type programs as well. So we work with a lot of people to integrate technology into a meaningful teaching and learning environment. And that's basically our mission, and it's fun. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what brought me here today and what provides some of the context for what we're going to be sharing and getting to during today's presentation. I do want to make sure that I'm monitoring the chat area, and I'll pause now and then if there are some questions that I either missed or that I can circle back on, but I'm hoping to get to a lot of things. We'll pause 3 times for the woo clap interaction and an opportunity then to either unmute or ask questions in the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But the Montana Digital Academy, we started in legislation in 2009. And we are basically tasked with supplemental online programs for public school students in our state. We offered our first classes in 2010. We hire Montana certified public school teachers, and we have an array of supplemental offerings that range from the traditional core classes to a variety of electives and languages, foreign languages and that sort of thing. We have one teacher, 25 students, mostly asynchronous in nature. And of course, we're using Moodle to support that effort. And then in 2011, I was actually hired to come on and start our credit recovery program at that time. We were using a third-party program to help support that effort, just to roll it out at scale. And that was for all core classes, grades 9 through 12. And we teamed with local site facilitators and our content area, we called them coaches at the time, to provide a certified teacher of record that graded the program and oversaw that rollout with me. But it was, again, for just core high school classes to help students recover credit before they aged out of the system. Learned a lot of lessons, and both of those programs still exist. There are essential programs in our state-funded portion of our Montana Digital Academy. But then in 2013, we knew that we needed to do something more based upon feedback from our users. We needed to be able to bring forward a more flexible option. And we couldn't really do that when we're tied to providing a score that then counts for credit on a transcript. We have to have some sort of semblance of a calendar and grades and that sort of thing. But when we were part of the EdReady Montana, or the EdReady pilot nationally, we were one of 5 states to try that on for size. We're a member of the NROC community. It's a nonprofit out of California that creates and curates open educational resources. You may have heard of Hippocampus as one of their other sites. And what we did with EdReady, we were one of those first 5 states with 4 sites, university, 2 high schools, and a middle school. We wanted to figure out, well, a program like EdReady work if we implement it. And the biggest need at that point in time was for incoming freshmen at the University of Montana, where we're housed. So it was a good partnership. We had buy-in from their student support structure and their math department, and we piloted it. Based upon that pilot, then we were funded for 3 years by a private, by the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, by a private foundation, to try this out and have an impact. For 3 years, we piloted. We brought back those results and asked for 3 more, and they said, no, I think you need 5. And so during that the subsequent 5 years, we were tasked with continuing to expand and support and grow our math presence, get deeper into career preparation, and then pilot and field test and roll out English, which we've done now for the last 2 years. And then, of course, COVID. So our mission has really not changed during that time. We just have a very acute problem that we're also addressing right now, with folks trying to go from somewhat interested in teaching and learning in blended or online to emergency teaching, blended, online, remote, etc. And so we're having to manage that change for our state. And it's different from our core programming, and it's non-credit bearing, it's privately funded, so we can serve anybody. And it's a local implementation support model, which I'm going to talk to you about now and how we arrived at that. But this is what it is. We have, if you haven't used EdReady, I'd be happy to take you through it at some point in time. We don't have time to focus on the technology today, but I'll give you the highlights. It's online, of course. There's an initial diagnostic over a subset of math skills that we choose. We call them goals. So a goal would be, for example, algebra readiness. And you're tested over a smattering of the topic, and then it provides you a personalized study path based upon how you do on that initial diagnostic that incorporates both mastery tests and learning resources. The resources provided directly by the system are online. We've supplemented it with our own offline materials provided by educators around our state and nationally to help support that learning online. And then we bring in an experienced team, our EdReady Montana team. We provide professional development on how to make that all work, technical support and setup, and then curricular planning and advising support, both local when we can, and virtual, which we do now solely. And then that's always upfront and ongoing throughout the change process and implementation. And then we also go through the reporting and tracking functionality of the system to help people identify gaps and address them through their teaching and learning approach. Small team, there's 6 of us, and we've been together, this whole team, for around 3 years now. Our ambassador team of 4 on the left there, actually, I think her picture showed up. I think she's in this session. Verge Hale is our lead ambassador. And then we have 3 other ambassadors and a full-time instructional registrar that helps with the technical setup and support. We serve over 500 affiliations statewide, again, from upper elementary through adult ed. We have around 6,000 when we're not in summer and COVID, 6,000 active students per month. And they range in age, as you can see there. And we have over 130,000 student enrollments in the time that since we've started. This is a chart for the last 2 years leading up into the summer of this year of our monthly user base. And around 3/4 of those are between elementary and high school. And the rest, adult ed, is a small portion, but it's constant and active at every adult basic education site around our state. And then, like I mentioned, at the places like the Montana State Prison that also serves adult learning needs. So that's what we do. And then I want to go into some background research, but first I also want to pop over into what you're concerned about. So the first, and if you haven't done WooClap yet, the link is at the top, www.wooclap.com. And then I created an extension there, with or without walls. So if you have /with or without walls after that, you can take part in the 3 questions that I'll interact with you all on. And I know what I knew, or what I was hoping we would get here, is there are so many competing words and efforts going on in our minds to manage all of this stuff and get a handle on it going into this year. Some of them directly related to instruction, and some of them probably in the past weren't even related, but they are now. And so having to think about all these things that we have to think about going into it, how do we come in, add a calm voice to the room and help educators get to a meaningful teaching and learning environment and situation that's both flexible and meaningful for their audience, for their students. And that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And just looking at these, everything in here, it's just, it brings you almost to tears to think about how complex the situation is. But we can do it, and we can do it with a little bit of background research to help guide a little bit of a method to our madness, so to speak. And so I'm going to talk to you about what called us. It's usually an educational problem of some sort that drives you toward an adoption or a change process that you lead your team through, or try to lead a group through. And our calling back in 2012, 13 timeframe was directly tied to the needs of higher education at that point in time. That's why we initially went into EdReady, was to help solve this problem for high schools and higher ed. This was their numbers at the time. 29% of first-time freshmen at 2-year campuses enrolling in remedial math in their first academic year will complete a college-level math within 2 years. Take a second to absorb that. 1 in 3, if you are enrolled in developmental math, will pass a math class at the college level above 100 that counts for credit within 2 years. This was pretty common at the time. There's a lot of efforts that have gone on since then. 2-year education, it was almost a coin flip, 45%. And numbers showed at that point in time in Montana, 9% of those students placed in developmental math overall would graduate within 6 years with a bachelor's degree. That's not good enough. I don't care who you are or what you say. That makes me feel guilty as an educator, taking students' money and putting them into a developmental math class overall. And we're not doing the service. And this was another headline at the time, the calling from the ACT scores were low, math scores were low, our math students are not performing well. Well, why not? it generally would come back to the fact that there were gaps that opened up at some point in time, and we kept covering the material and they kept passing our classes, but it wasn't enough to have them prepared for the high stakes testing that was going on at the time. That was really the only way that we screened for it. So we started a program at that point in time, and we started measuring it. This is actually one that we piloted, and it was based upon those early pilots, and it grew. And then this was the official first year that they kind of rolled it out, 2017, 2018. I've removed the school, but it is a university that we worked with. And over this 2 years of this case study, because these haven't been vetted by the local school, these are just our numbers that we've done on the back end. That's why I've not added the school name to protect that information, because they haven't verified this. This is independently verified by us as we went in and did case study research. 196 students at this school took advantage of the program in 17 and 18, and their placement score improvement program, they used EdReady for 20 hours, and then they retook the exam, the placement exam, and there were 106 in 2017, 90 in 2018. 61% of them, 120 of them, improved at least one full level. So this was a 5-level test, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so a lot of them improved their scores, but 61% of them improved a whole level. So that essentially tested them out of a class. So if you came in at level 1, you were tested and you would normally be placed into pre-algebra. Level 2 would be basic or intermediate algebra. And then basic algebra would be 1 or 2, or basic algebra or pre-algebra would be level 1, intermediate algebra 2, college algebra 3, survey of calculus 4, college calculus 5. That was the flow. And then there was a non-STEM track as well, but basically 3 made you college ready. So anything below a 3. And so 61% of them improved one full level out of that. 65 of those students improved their placement exam from below college level to above college level. So we're directly addressing that initial problem of not passing the class within 2 years. They got into that class that subsequent fall after doing this in a summer program that was free. And those students, it was estimated, and this is where the big asterisk comes in because nobody's verified this number for me, but they saved around $50,000 to $60,000. And 62 out of 65 of the students that took part in the program passed their next math class with an average of B-. 95.4% of those students that took part in that program versus a 1 in 3 or a 1 in 2 chance over 2 years. And they did it the next semester. We were pretty happy with that. And so are they, by the way. But 185 of those 196 students took classes after 2017 and 18 summer programs, and 11 students had not enrolled in a math class. So we looked at those 169 out of those 185, or 91.4% of them there passed their first college level math class. That's across the board, not just those students that went from developmental to college level. And 109 out of those 120 passed their subsequent math class with a B- average as well. It just all came out the B- average. It was up and down from there, but so we felt like we were making an impact. And then this is the news lately. This is what we're dealing with right now. Can't attend school. What happens? The results ran for remote learning. It doesn't work. It's become political. So this is just a quick search on bias of news sites. And you've all seen these charts that show, I mean, there's 1,000,001 of them out there. So what we've worked to do in our programs is not only what our Montana Digital Academy leadership has put out in as far as the continuum of what it takes and how much it takes to do everything from minimal distance learning to a full distance learning or blended learning option. But we've really gone to school on that research in the past. So this goes back to some of the very early seminal work that this is part of my dissertation work of, however long ago that was. But one of the key findings for me in writing about change and distance learning and implementation of successful programs, it goes back to group dynamics. And Kurt Lewin early on came up with field theory. And if you haven't looked at this, it's pretty interesting because it talks about the intricacies of leadership. And this is a long time ago. This is definitely pre-internet for 1947, right? But he talks about driving forces. And as soon as you have a driving force in change, there's a resistance. And this was a quote out of there. People are naturally resistant to change, and their ego is impacted when they do not understand it. As a result, they need help working through change. Once through the change, they tend to want to stabilize again at the new level. And so he talks a lot about these levels and causing, and how do you bring about permanent change? How do you get people to a new level? Because right now we have all that cloud of words that we just put out there right before we got started, and it's a mess. How do we help people through that mess of everything floating around in their mind to get it to change? And so, here's a couple of quotes out of that article. But in discussing the means of bringing about a desired state of affairs, one should not think in terms of the goal to be reached, but rather in terms of a change from the present level to a desired one. And think of it as a stair step. Think of it as moving up a stair and not stepping back down. And that should be your goal. Should be getting together your group around some sort of issue and moving up that stairway. You're not reaching a goal and you're done. Too many people see technology, especially, as an end result, a goal, a magic elixir, something that once you put it into place, it's just you just sit back, grade your papers, put your feet up on your desk, drink your coffee, and kids are off because they're digital natives and they know stuff that we don't. And that's not true. So a successful change includes 3 aspects. They talk about unfreezing whatever the problem is. You have to have a reason to move. If you don't have a reason to move, if you don't have a reason to change, don't change. But if you have one, that's what you have to do. Is first you have to realize you have a problem. Your 12-step process. I have a problem. What is it? Let's figure out together how we move toward solving that problem. And then moving to a new level, and then freezing that group dynamic, that social aspect of your organization at that new level. Incorporated with that, one of the things in a systems approach to distance education, again, early days, right? Moore and Kearsley, 1996, and 3 versions since then, bring together what they call the system approach to distance education. And I just have a simple picture here of an organization structure. You have your parent organization with policies, management, structure, all sorts of departments. But when you get to the teaching and learning organization within that, in your school or in your district or whatever, outside of all the rest of those issues, you have your source of knowledge, you make it into courses, you figure out how to deliver the courses, and you get that teaching and learning loop between students and courses, teachers. Throw in distance learning and it complicates it. You bring about, worse yet, some sort of educational technology initiative or global pandemic or something that really turns everybody upside down and moves their cheese, and you have a system that that gets all out of whack and needs to be put in through some change management process, as we talked about with Lewin. And there's a great picture in the blended learning model. If you've read Blended by Horn and Staker, this is a great model. I kind of borrowed this from Michael Horn when he was doing a presentation, and I believe I captured it in a screen capture. I don't know if this is directly in the book or not, but he gets credit. It's his drawing. But I use this a lot because right here in the middle, this technology piece, this brings into focus then that big word cloud that we just put together. the technology of what we're doing in EdReady or what you might be doing in your implementation of a new LMS, or throw in the technology X, Y, and Z. It's just one little part of the greater problem that you're trying to solve here. And you have to build upon these levels. You have to have a rallying cry or a problem or a reason to change, right? You have to get the right people to the table. You have to get the right team in place. You have to design that student experience. You have to design the teaching experience. You have to bring content, technology, facilities, or the distance learning, or the other pieces of the technology that are not just the program and the programs itself. And then you have to figure the rest of this out by choosing your model, shaping your culture. Big, huge changes going on right now around culture in our buildings and in our school districts. And then identify and prioritize those assumptions, test it, learn it, adjust, and iterate. You're not done when you just come up with an idea for September 1st this year. None of us are going to be. We know that more than ever. We've always said it, but it's more true now than it ever has been. And so then I went to one of my professors who for my master's program, and she wrote an article. Natalie Millman out of George Washington University wrote this article just in the last week or so, and it talks about planning for the uncertainty and what leaders can do to prepare for fall. And I just pulled out the 10 items here and put them in here for later. We don't have enough time to delve into all of these because we're going to jump into what we do. But again, I think it just echoes a lot of what we're talking about in the communicating plans, collecting data, proving that it works, identifying, purchasing the resources, designing differentiated professional development, all the things that we've done to build successful programs. It's nothing new. We've been saying the same thing since 1947. It just looks a little shinier and newer right now. So that leads me to this, because this was a meme from earlier today. I think I saw it when I opened up Facebook this morning. And this is a principal friend of mine out of Idaho. He said, this is what he posted: principals trying to create a plan for fall and reopening, and shows this guy with this plan on the wall. Looks, again, a lot like our first word cloud there. So we'll take a little bit of a break here and do the next, do this next one, and then I'll dive into the solutions. So we'll go to number 2 here, which is what pieces need to come together for you to have successful teaching and learning in 2020, 2021 school year. What of the things that we threw out there are on your mind? What's top on your list? And I'll look at some questions here, see if those were all Montana numbers. That's one of the questions in there. I like the security, safety. I mean, if anything else, if nothing else, and don't get me wrong here, we're not just pressing forward for change purposes, but we know that it's been a traumatic situation for so many of these schools, students, teachers, staff, parents, everybody out there. It's so critical for us to be able to be the ones to come in and help with this part, with the technology adoption and problem and innovation, so that they can focus on some of that other stuff without this being just one more thing that doesn't get done. So teaching and learning can happen efficiently once they get to that point. And we know that. And so when we're coming into schools and try to schedule time for professional development, we know that there's a lot of competing items and that we're one item on there, but we're part of that system. And so we want to help take away some of that pressure from the leadership that's local in schools to help with this implementation when we come in. So I love the way that this one's evolving as well, a plan. All right, so I'll pop back over into this. This local implementation support model and how we use is how we build around all that research and background to solve those problems. And so we won the WCET WOW award in 2018 because of this model and how we've implemented it to help so many around our state. And out of that, this is one of the blog posts that we wrote as a part of it leading up to that award. But our lessons really echo, it's funny, they're also 10, not on purpose. I didn't copy Natalie Millman, but this was what we said around that time, was finding educators willing to try something new, making student experience seamless, finding champions to use the program early on, make data to have data. We were a new program in 2013, and a lot of people sat back with their arms crossed and said, prove that it works before I'll try it. And we said, well, we'll come back to you later when we have some data. We're gonna go make some data with somebody that wants to make change happen now. And so we didn't just test it to death. We rolled it out far and wide, and we went from that finite case of having the high school to college transition and getting students through to college level math to tons of high schools adopting to get better at that before they got to the placement test. And then the high schools were using it. So the middle schools, our biggest use case right now is over half of our monthly users are middle school to high school transition, and students getting ready for high school level math now using the program. And that brought about our need to offer hands-on professional development, technical support, defining who does what. We expect, sometimes it's one person, but we want somebody that can help us enroll students. We want somebody who's using it on the ground. We want someone who's leading the effort locally that can be our point person and talking about the curriculum and how to integrate it in with the rest of their program. And we need to have that. And then be willing to have that ongoing discussion with us. We're not just a one and done type program. We're there to help evolve and solve those problems and help students learn how to learn well. It's important to teach students how to not think that they're just not worthy of learning math, or they don't have the math gene or whatever it is. And that can only happen at the local level. That can't be somebody that comes in and shows you how to use a piece of technology. And then the most important thing there is that blended learning loop that we talked about before. But when you're applying that in the classroom, the blended learning loop is you have a student sit down at the computer with a plan. And when they're using the technology, they're executing that plan that you have for them, and you use the results of that to inform your instruction. And then you set them back down at the computer again when you want them to be there with another plan based upon adjustments that you make in your instruction. And that's when we talk about a blended learning loop. That's what we talk about. But really for us, it broke down into that. Acknowledge that you have a problem and find an educator or team that wants to sit down and try to solve that problem. Forcing a change or saying we're all going to use X, Y, Z on the first Monday of the year when everybody comes back. That can happen, and you can manage that change, but that resisting force that Lewin talks about is strong, very strong. It's strong. There are a lot of crossed arms. You walk into a room of educators that you just told, you're all going to use this no matter what. And so when we hear a top-down change like that being enforced someplace, we automatically, and Verge, who's on here too, we automatically go behind the scenes and start working with the lead teachers, the curriculum folks, the department chair, whoever it might be, to say, hey, we're just here to help you. I know you're being faced with this. Everybody's going to use this thing, but here's how we're going to help you. So let's sit down and learn this together so you don't go into this meeting with nothing behind you. Let's have a discussion. So forcing change is difficult. Student experience is so important. We talked earlier in the day in my first session about how important this is. It's not a matter of whether you're going to lose usernames and passwords or get them confused. It's a real thing, and it's just going to happen if you're using technology. So our whole system was based around getting a student a username, getting them a password, giving them a simple website to go to, log in and go. And everything else that we did kind of grew around that. We will not sit down with the team unless they have somebody invested on the other end of helping students and interested in diving in to the professional development end of the support. It can't just be give us the tech and let us roll with it, because we've learned over and over again how poorly that works. There is no change force at that point. All you have is something just patched over the top that you have labeled as a solution. It's not a solution. And so we try to get them from being interested in kicking the tires on something to actually using it, and do that as quickly as we can. We really want to plan ahead with folks on what are you trying to measure? We showed you some of that information that we had on that higher education problem, but that sometimes isn't as clear. But if you go into your change process, thinking about where you want to be and what you want to measure at that next step or that next level in order to prove that it was worthwhile, thinking of the 7th and 8th grade teachers that saw that their students weren't getting enough practice in math and worked ahead with their study hall teacher to steal back some of that time and integrate the program into the system so that they could be more ready for high school math, because they noticed a slip in scores over the past few years. They wanted to look at their scores and they wanted to look at the pre-existing scores and the current ones and see, can we make a difference? Can we make an impact? They went into that with a great idea. Start assessing and measuring it early. So then that justifies for you when you want to go back to your school board, or you want to go to the budget table and fight for a piece of the pie, or whatever it might be if you're in distance learning department or a tech department or certain academic department, or wherever you're coming to this from. And we just know the importance of hands-on PD, and we created that ambassador program because we couldn't do the program without it. One person, 2 people can't do it all. You have to have some people that understand educators, that understand the technology and understand the curriculum, and can bring that all together if you're using ed tech to make a change process happen. We put out surveys. What do you need? What do you want? We survey people at the end of them to see what they want next so that we can schedule follow-up meetings. We individualize it for each site and each school and each type of education and each type of use case that's out there. But it has to be delivered by someone that you don't feel like you're just coming in and selling the product, because there's just too many pieces to do that. And then our technology or our professional development has evolved hugely. When we first started, it was very tech-centered. We had a low understanding of what all it did. We were learning along with the educators a lot of times at first. But as we grew in knowing how to implement the program and not just use it, how to implement it at local schools and all different types of use cases and levels, it evolved. We went from 75 to 80% tech and how the program works to 15, 20% about the technology. People started understanding how it works. That's not an issue anymore. How do I make it work with my students? How do I make it work in my classroom? How do I make it work in blended learning or with my Google Classroom or whatever it is, or LMS? But providing the resources and strategies to implement became more important, and how it works for individuals. And then nearing the end here, having tech support is a must. You don't get a technology integration project off the ground if you don't have a 5-minute rule, because people will get frustrated and they'll say, see, I told you it didn't work. especially those with the crossed arms. You're talking about that force pushing down. It's new technology, and that ego gets there. And, you know, Parker Palmer and The Courage to Teach. If you haven't read that book, you should check it out. But it takes a lot of courage to teach because you're putting yourself out there. You're performing. You're going live on stage every day, all the time, just like we are here, stepping up in front of a group. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. And to do that with unsure footing and something that you don't feel confident in, it's sometimes a deal killer. It's a deal killer for a lot of people. And that's why there's a lot of hesitancy to change the system or change to do something new. So you have to have that. You're struggling with it for 5 minutes, just give us a call. We'll be here to help you with that technical issue. It's not a big deal. Just give us a holler. But it has to be available and has to be responsive. You should never get a note that says, hey, that's not my job to solve that problem, or you need to go over to the side window because the front door isn't good enough. And you just have to be open to that change. Nothing kills it faster than a teacher sitting there with a bunch of students that can't get into the system. That's going to kill your initiative before it gets off the ground. And that goes back to that whole username and password thing, or the connectivity issue, or whatever it might be. And then defining those roles and responsibilities, giving everybody a piece of that, and letting them wake up every morning and own part of that technology change that they're trying to implement. If it's a PLC team or a department of educators, they need to feel empowered that they have some ability to impact this change and figure out how it works best with their students and their program, because nothing turns them off more than hearing that someone else is coming in with all the ideas on how you teach X, Y, and Z, because people take a lot of pride in the way that they teach and the way that their students learn from them. Again, we talked about this earlier, being sort of that stair-step model. Even the best laid plans change. Boy, have we learned that. We went to remote learning within 2 weeks after this all started this last year. And us in ed tech and distance learning and all that sort of stuff, but for our careers, we're used to these changes that happen, and we have to implement them before, you know, the curtain goes up on the year or the semester starts or whatever. But there was a lot of people in education that have kind of, you know, it just works. They just make it work for us, right? Well, they got a live view under the hood at the sausage making factory. They got to see all the ingredients laid out on the table. And in 2 weeks, you have to go remote. Good luck. And everybody got to experience it. It was forced. And so we can do better, though. We can definitely work with those teachers to see that as a challenge and to innovate and do it around a big, hairy educational issue that we got to figure out how to solve, because the normal isn't going to be the normal next fall. And we're already starting to see signs. There's a lot of schools that are saying they're going to go back. There's a lot of pressure depending on which websites you use or see or listen to, what it's going to look like. But what we know is we probably don't know what it's going to look like. And the sooner we all realize that, sooner we can kind of get behind some of these, start laying some plans that we can start walking up those stairs together. And one of the things that we've learned too is in any of this online or blended, you don't learn by clicking. You don't abandon your students. They can't do math by clicking. They have to do math. You can't write, become a reader and a writer without reading and writing. And you can't improve on that unless you have an educator in our model assessing it meaningfully and responsively, and all the other things that it takes to be a good assessment specialist and teacher. But most students need more guidance and support from an educator on both ends of the tool. It doesn't matter if they're just sitting there. You can't set them loose on it, because they're going to treat it like a game. They're going to click until they get it, if they're allowed to. And you have to structure their time. That loop is important. Sit at the computer with a plan that an educator helps put in place. It's critical. And that gets to that last piece, which is completing that blended learning loop of preparing students to learn online and using what the students do online to help inform your instruction. Talked about it, can't enforce it enough. It has to happen in this new world that we live in. And we have to put those items in place to manage that. So where I have my third issue is letting you do a little bit of ranking. So out of those areas, I boiled the 10 down to 7. But rate your top concerns for fall of 2020, and then let's discuss. Let's have a discussion here at the end here. Take a little bit of time. Takes a little bit of time to rank some stuff and take a stand. What are your top concerns now in rank order, not just a cloud? What are the ones that you feel like you need to address right away around the change? So we're kind of bypassing some of the lower end things of Maslow's hierarchy here. I know that came up in that word cloud. Sorry. We're talking about the change implementation now. So that top one there, number 2. So it looks like finding that team that's ready to try and implement is really coming out toward the number 1. Maybe not a consensus there, but it's a pretty important item to think about. And what I would say is you want to start with your most willing individuals, get them around the table early, start laying that groundwork and that plan. That is one of the first priorities that you have. Nice. Does anybody want to? I was thinking of them as a 1 through 7 ranking. So maybe I should have displayed that first. Next time I do a national webinar using WooClap, I will be better at defining what the 1 through 7 is. What can I answer? I'm hoping you got some tidbits to take away. I can go back and revisit slides as well if you have some questions about anything. Feel free to unmute, send a chat. Alan, you got something for me?
Not, I don't actually know.
I agree, Scott. It is the end of a long day. I really appreciate all your time here and sitting through to the very end with me, everybody. Hopefully this wasn't just a preaching to the choir. Hopefully you got a tidbit or two or three that you can take back and help impact something that you have going on, change-wise, implementation-wise in your school, district, university, team, whatever you go back to. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Melanie. Looks like I must have covered it all. It always worries me when there's no questions, though.
Any questions at all?
Doesn't sound like it. I think I've given enough wait time here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I see some people dropping out. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap it up then. We'll just remember that this has been recorded, and you'll be able to go to the course pretty soon. And I'm still waiting on a response back from Ryan about Ryan Hazen about about whether I need to be setting up the course videos, or if that's something that he or Dan are going to do. So, but you'll see it back in the little course when it's ready. So, nobody else has any questions, I'll go ahead and end it, and see everybody at 7 for the big Moot Money roundup.
thanks a lot, Alan.
And
Appreciate
thanks
it.
again, Ryan. Very just fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.